Let me introduce Aileen to the podium. Please give her a round of applause. So Eileen's topic is super relevant today, and I really like that she chose to handle this topic. ChatGPT and AI have become just washed over the academic world like a tidal wave. And even this year, I've been trying to figure out what the right policy is. I think, as most of you know, we started the year with sort of the AI police, and I don't think that works. And so actually, I kind of showed you my attempt at what an AI policy will look like in the future. And a lot of what we talked about is sort of the same conclusions that Aileen came to, I think. So anyway, really excited to hear her view of AI and ChatGPT in particular. And so her words are, I would like to thank God for his unending and faithful guidance until this day. Mr. Zorn for helping me find interesting facts and pointing out unthinkable arguments, and especially revising the speech. Mr. Wade for getting me and my friends through this year, keeping us all on track, though not always on time. My panelists, Ms. Denise and Mr. JC, who have spared their time to listen and discuss, and parents, and my brother, who have endured listening to hours of my practices, and my friends who have continuously supported me in class and out of class periods. Her title is BYTE, B-Y-T-E, Bite Off More Than You Can Chew, using ChatGPT as a tool, not a source. Please give Aileen one more round of applause as I get the timer set up. And her panelists are Ms. Denise and Mr. JC. Aileen, I'm going to start the timer after you start, so you can start whenever you're ready.
Have you ever wished for a genie in a bottle? Well, I have. That is why as a child, I would always envy Aladdin, who met the genie. Just imagine, it can give you anything you ever wish for in an instant. You want a cup of tea, it can appear right in front of you. You want to travel somewhere placed on the other side of the world, the magic carpet could take you there. However, just like any other matter in the world, this genie had its own limitations. It could only gain you 3 wishes, and these wishes could not force the free will of others. And Aladdin, if not careful, would be at risk in getting too dependent on this limited genie. Fast forwarding to the 21st century reality, we also have a genie on our own, that in writing. It can give you answers for anything you need with just a few clicks on your keyboard and a second after. Yes, this is everyone's best friend, ChatGPT. Let me first introduce you to this writing genie from its earliest history. The idea of building automatons or machines that could help humans live have existed since the earliest Greek civilization. In the myth, Thales became the first bronze automaton that the gods create to protect the ships from pirates, far before any real developed machines were formed. As these machines and ideas developed, aided with the rise of computerization, one question arises. Can these machines be trained to think like humans do? And this becomes the foundational question for artificial intelligence. For a machine to be considered as an artificial intelligence, it should pass what is called the Turing test. And out of thousands of machines created, ChatGPT became the second machine to pass this test, meaning that it has the ability to imitate how humans think and also converse like humans do. After its release in November of 2022, ChatGPT 3.5 have gathered more than 100 million users within just 2 months. ChatGPT's features and interfaces are particularly suitable for students. As evident, more than 3/4 of all of its users ranges in the younger age group. However, 1 out of these 3 students have been using this chatbot as a source for their academic writing. This is qualitatively different than that of an academic research source, because by definition, ChatGPT is a chatbot. Its main job is to chat and give data accordingly in a conversational way, while academic resources, which etymologically means to rise, should either elevate or deepen the writing effectively. The fundamental problem lies here. How we use ChatGPT in reality is completely different to what OpenAI as its developers initially released it for. This issue requires global and immediate attention. Analogically, ChatGPT and cocaine can be seen as cousins. Without adequate oversight, it could render a society to be excessively dependent on technology, that which can hinder the God given intellect to foster stewardship over other creation. The two sides of a coin that ChatGPT offers triggers different educational institutions to deliver various responses. Some schools, including the New York City Public Schools and the Seattle Public Schools, have blocked or strictly restricted the access towards ChatGPT to prevent any irresponsible behaviors of students using this as a source for their academic writing and other illegitimate source activity. On the other hand, some other educators, such as Hanny Ferret, a computer science professor at UC Berkeley, have been using this exact same chatbot to improve teaching materials and processes. AI and ChatGPT's development cannot be stopped or even slowed down as more and more innovators work in this field. Thus, the educational community should head on the way of balancing the scale between the ethical challenges of ChatGPT's usage and the incredible potential that it can actually bring to improve future education. As for now, students should not use ChatGPT as a source for their academic research for three main reasons. First, its nascent developmental stage. Second, its intended purpose as a conversational tool. And third, its potential to negatively impact future education. Despite the remarkable capabilities and widespread recognition of ChatGPT, it is firstly crucial for us to acknowledge that the relatively recent development of this technology could introduce potential challenges. One of the most common problems is the inaccurate answers that it might generate. A study by Purdue University states that out of 500 questions, half of them, to some extent, were inaccurate. Back in October of last year, I tried inputting the prompt on naming some Indonesian Christian entertainment figures. Can you tell whose name comes up first on the list? Iqbal Ramadan. The name Ramadan itself clearly shows that of a common Muslim name. And in fact, we all know that Iqbal Ramadan is a devoted Muslim believer. This is detrimental for academic research because we might not easily identify the mistake as easy as I did in the previous example. One study noted a paradoxical trend that despite this high inaccuracy rate, people still prefer to use these AI-generated answers. People are drawn to it because it looks good and sounds confident, attracting them without hesitation, especially those who are inexperienced. Even when some realize that its beauty is false, they may still prefer this kind of answer because they prioritize presentation over truth. Aside from the inaccuracies that ChatGPT can give, this chatbot is also susceptible to various forms of bias. Language bias is evident as ChatGPT's own developers claim that this model performs best in English. However, as Laura Cabello demonstrates, it shows that using English to write the prompt would reveal certain Western cultural bias within the answer. This is problematic because 85% of all of ChatGPT's users originates from non-native English countries, meaning that for them to use this as a source for their academic research would pose a dilemma. A dilemma between using English to write the prompt but be prone to cultural bias, or using their own respective languages but be ready to get an underwhelming quality of answers. The third limitation of ChatGPT in its nascent development is its tendency to generalize data in an unbalanced way. AI generalization is the process on which AI systems enhance their performance on new, unseen data. The previous example of Iqbal Ramadan is an example for underfitting. Underfitting itself is a type of generalization that is due to insufficient data training, which may lead to both inaccurate and biased answer. Iqbal Ramadan can be generated as an answer due to several different reasons, like only focusing on the word entertainment and Indonesian itself, or having limited amount of data about Indonesian language, Indonesian cultures, as well as Indonesian people. Generally, the model only provides information up to 2021, limiting its capacity to address queries that requires current knowledge. Thus, is this chatbot really useful enough for us to use to write new research papers? As an old saying once says that Rome was not built in a day. For a city to be known for its greatness and its wealth, it should undergo a long stage of process and stages of development. The same goes for this chatbot. With only 1 year from its initial release, many are still yet to be improved to maximize its full potential. Moving on to the next argument, using ChatGPT as a source is not a feasible thing to do due to its nature as a conversational tool. First off, ChatGPT is verbose, and what I mean by verbose is that it uses more words than necessary. Think about it. When we talk to each other in spoken language, we tend to repeat certain ideas in slightly different ways to emphasize what we mean. This is not compatible to academic research because we ought to be as efficient, as condensed, and as compact as possible. Think there was once this person. His name was Brian Petro. He was an AI consultant and he decided to test the verbosity of AI generated answers using two different prompts. The first one with shorter length, and the second one with extensive context from GitHub. The answer to the longer prompt was nearly 5 times longer than the shorter one. However, when both were summarized, they became similar and in length and content. Aside from its verbosity, ChatGPT is also currently cannot provide a credible citation for its answers. By nature, this chatbot does not have direct access to the internet, but it could hallucinate a page content just by judging on the words of our prompts. In a test conducted by Simon Willison, he made up 4 website links of titles with slight modifications. ChatGPT refuses to answer the first 3 prompts due to their invalid content. However, now let's try inputting the last one, following that of a complete and logical legal URL format. Surprise, surprise, this will give you an entirely convincing invented story summary from a made-up article title. So, how does this chatbot actually generate its answers? From the very words that we type in and not from real, credible resources from the internet. Thirdly, the reasoning process of this chatbot is not objective and unclear. In conversing with AI, developers use what is called the chain of thought process. The chain of thought process, in simple terms, is how AI learns what we believe from our past conversations with them to answer our future prompts. This is not acceptable in academic research. Let's say that I want to find some evidence for a crucial or a controversial topic about abortion, for example. At first, this model will generate neutral answers. But as the conversation progresses and I show my stance that I do not support abortion, then the evidences to follow will lean towards my stance. Academic sources should be objective. It should have a stance on its own, that which cannot be swayed by what I already have in mind, thus signifying why this can be used as a source. Lastly, the use of ChatGPT in academic settings and writing would pose more long-term negative impacts than positive ones. With students being overly reliant on AI, the role of teachers as mentors, guides, and learning facilitators will slowly diminish. Imagine this scenario. Mr. Wade will be arranging lesson plans for rhetoric using ChatGPT. I will be doing this thesis using the same chatbot as well. And later on now, my panelists and Mr. Wade will be grading this thesis with the same model too. See this whole learning process again. Who is the only one learning? ChatGPT, of course. This is what the future of education may look like, where 90% of the cognition process is delegated to AI, and nobody learns anything. So, what should we do in this case? Well, in traveling, you would want to use a GPS to reach your destination easier, like that of utilizing ChatGPT in education. However, also in traveling, you wouldn't want to miss the authentic experiences and hidden gems that only the locals would know. In this case, our teachers are our local guides. They are the one who have emotion, the experience, and also can emotionally understand us. The process of learning is actually felt by our interactions with our peers and our teachers, and that is something that we should never replace. Secondly, the use and dependency on AI could create an environment of distrust. Nowadays, teachers are always suspicious of their students using this chatbot to complete their task. I mean, this is something that we all have experienced, right? However, we as students, we also look at our teachers as our enemies, someone that we should always try to play tricks and get away with them. No education can grow within this environment of distress. How can we learn and how can we discuss, have the heart to listen to our teachers if we depend too much on this chatbot? The more we get suspicious of our teachers, the more we depend on this chatbot, and the more we depend on this chatbot, collectively, this will even reduce the essence of our own humanness. The excessive use of ChatGPT could cause us to lose senses such as nonverbal cues in discussions like body motion, hand gestures, and real life communication and interactions with other people. And in this case, we wouldn't be much different than our own creation. Finally, the dependency on AI could cause us to lose critical thinking skills and kills the learning process itself. In an online research app by Real Research, it shows that out of 10,000 respondents, half of them answered and strongly agreed with the statement that the reliance on technology could cause a decrease in original creativity as well as productivity. This decrease in original creativity, added with the bias and inaccurate information that we generate to formulate new research papers, would, in the long term, cause a ripple of negative effect towards the quality of future research papers. Take the Book of Kings, for example. This book is filled with kings that do not live up to God's laws. Each king follows the crooked ways of their forefathers, leaving a nation of extremely corrupt morals, and God to finally punish them to exile. This is how the quality of future research would look like, where it would be based on already inaccurate research papers before them. I'm sure that none of us would want to end up like this, and thus we should never follow their example. Although many arguments support why we should not use ChatGPT as a source, some still think otherwise. Most of us may justify our usage as a source by thinking that, oh, spending the least amount of time in gathering evidence would help me and allocate more time to perform deeper analysis later on. Well, yes, this can be actually true. However, come to think of it again, do you really have this thought when you first used this chatbot for this purpose? Imagine yourself doing this research paper like that of going into a maze full of twists and turns, yet the option of using AI provides a shortcut. A very tempting option, isn't it, to abandon the tedious journey for a way easier route. In reality, most of us, or even all of us, would not bother to do more analysis but would be satisfied with the bare minimum that this chatbot actually gives us. Some other arguments may say that the inaccurate answers that ChatGPT generates is not due to the quality of the chatbot, but because of human error, like that of giving ambiguous or inaccurate prompts itself. While it is true that the generation of qualitative prompts like that of what we may know as prompt engineering is important, even in meticulous prompt construction like my examples previously stated before, this issue still persists and thus we should still refrain from using this as a source for academic research. Reviewing what we have discussed so far, we should not use ChatGPT as a source because it is unsuitable due to its risk of inaccuracies and bias in AI development, its tendency to generate verbose and subjective answers due to its conversational style, as well as the potential disruption that it could actually bring to impact future education. However, note that utilizing ChatGPT in itself to some extent is not inherently problematic, but it should be wisely used and monitored. Well, let me take you back to the story of Aladdin. Aladdin couldn't ask the genie to make Jasmine fall in love with him because it is out of her own free will. However, at the end, Aladdin accomplished his goal with his own efforts, still with the help of the genie throughout the process. Instead of being the direct source of Aladdin and Jasmine being together, this genie acts as a companion for the young man, helping him in the process. The same goes for us and ChatGPT. We should not use it as a primary source, but rather as a companion, supplementing rather than replacing the God-given intellect and reasoning. Soon, we all here will graduate. We will continue on learning in our respective universities, but one thing is for sure. AI will get even closer to us, getting more and more sophisticated as time goes by. And one question is this: will you let your own creation, this creation of ours, rule over ourselves and waste 4 more years of your life learning nothing? Or start to be mindful stewards of this creation of ours as God intended us to be? This decision is yours to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Aileen. Very good job. Let's start this time with Miss Denise. We'll start with Miss Denise this time.
Aileen, thank you for bringing up this topic and for having such a thoughtful, really well-researched and really thorough paper. That was really well done. And your memory was fantastic, well presented. So I loved how you started with the genie in the bottle, right? Like, don't we all wish, can I just make someone else do this? Like, and me not have to, right? Because we're lazy by nature, right? So, and I really enjoyed hearing, I think it was kind of new learning for me to actually recognize one of your arguments, your second proof, that ChatGPT was created to be chatty. I did not realize that. It was meant to be conversational, and therefore it's not necessarily using the most efficient communication, right? And I didn't recognize that part of it. So that was new information for me. Thanks for sharing that. I also agree that it can have really long-term negative impacts on education. So I think everything you argued, I would agree with, but I want to ask a few more specific questions. So you alluded to this, but how do you think that we can convince students to search for truth over ease or just accomplishing the assignment?
Okay, thank you for the question, Mrs. Strickland. May I drink first for a while?
Absolutely, take a drink. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe actually don't answer that question first. I have a bigger first question, so scratch that. The bigger first question is, and you did not quite address this in your paper, but I think you alluded to it. So maybe this is your opportunity to address it. What is the purpose of academic research? I mean, why are we even doing writing? What is the purpose of writing to begin with?
So, from my definition in this thesis, academic research is the writing to acquire new knowledge by inference and reasoning. And so, with us using or writing this academic research, we gather from like past papers and scholarly articles to generate something new to the community.
Okay, I would argue against your definition and say that that is one of the outcomes of academic research, but I don't think that's the purpose. So if you think about what is the purpose, like why do humans write? What is it that humans are wanting to do with writing? Why do we even write to begin with? Maybe start there.
So for that question, I think that the purpose of writing is for a future generation to know about our current stage. And so even in the past, when the first writings were first formed, in like even the simplest and most ancient ways possible, like in rocks or in papyrus or things like that. It's we can know about what happened in that time through this kind of writing.
Right. So people, though, at that time, they weren't writing for someone in the future. They were actually, it's just communication, isn't it? It's really a form of communication. We're trying to express either an idea or we're trying to record information, right? And so if we look at that deeper purpose and we think about academic research, yes, one of the outcomes is it's going to contribute to conversation about some idea or topic, but it's really just, it's a human impulse, don't you think? That we can't go throughout the world without communicating. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So then what I would argue in your paper, like even another argument you could make is that ChatGPT, when you said it was diminishing the human person, right? It's removing that creative part of what it means to be human, right? It's someone else doing the human work, and it's simplifying the work to just knowledge, just content, instead of something much deeper and relational and formative, which I think is what you were trying to argue. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the essence of humanness itself is how, how ChatGPT and the human mind is actually different, is actually in the process of the ability to create and like generate new things and not from already existing data.
I think that is so brilliant. And I think that's the heart of your argument. That it's reducing humans to something that an inanimate object is doing, and it's not a creative process, right? And that's the beauty and how we bear God's image. So yeah, that's the sweet spot of your argument, I think. Okay, so I have another question real quick. So how do you think we can encourage students to actually do the learning, to do the work of being human, to do the work of not just finding the answer, but to actually be curious and to want to create something? How do we make that happen in schools, right?
So to answer that question, I think that what schools should actually fix in the first place is the process of learning itself, where it becomes something that is, as its definition, is leisurely. And so, for example, like in Joel's thesis about homeworks, I think that improving the quality of homeworks and maybe in this case, if teachers ask students to do homeworks at home, then probably, and if they don't like it, then they would use this chatbots or like their friends or like something else to do this. But then when the homeworks are asked to do at school and it becomes something enjoyable and a part of learning, then they wouldn't even bother to like open these chatbots for this purpose.
I think that's really well said. I think if we think about as educators how to shift the paradigm of what kinds of assignments we give so that they become more meaningful and take more ownership on the student, then it does change your motivation, right? Yeah. You're not just, I need to get the answer, but turn this in for a grade, but it becomes about, what do I really know about this and what do I want to know, right?
So the focus is not on the efficiency of the time to do it at the least amount of time, but to actually understand it.
Yeah, and to enjoy the process of learning. I agree. So the obvious question is, did you use ChatGPT for your paper?
So as I have in this thesis, I do not go against like using it at all, right? Because it is a part of the fourth industrial revolution.
Sure.
And like this will not stop here. Even if teachers block or like become police, like what we
experienced earlier.
It won't work because it would eventually create this environment of distress as I have already.
I agree with that.
And so I think that can you repeat?
So the question is did you use ChatGPT and how did you use it as a tool? Like how did you like model this of what you're sharing?
So as ChatGPT is used as a conversational tool, and it has very deep vocabularies and wide range of amount of vocabularies according to context.
Okay.
I use this as to find as a contextual thesaurus.
Yeah.
Because from my experience, looking up synonyms in thesaurus would be like kind of hard to understand which word to use in this context.
Sure.
So when I use, like for example, rephrase this word in to like enhance the writing itself.
Yeah.
And so since ChatGPT is trained based on like billions of parameters, and it is due to the predictions of like the previous sentences and words, even the given words is actually based on context already. So
you're saying, as a non-native English speaker, it actually helped contribute to the ability to create a wide range of vocabulary so that you weren't saying the same word. Yeah, being redundant. That is a brilliant use of it. I like that.
Okay, let's move on to Mr. JC.
Check. Hi, Aileen.
Yes, sir.
Again, after 2 years, here we are again. All right. First, again, I'd like to comment the good thing about what you just presented. That you started with the case of the genie or Aladdin, and then you ended with that also. That's very persuading, especially to common people. Common people love stories, and you started it well, and then you ended with that also. So that's a compliment from me. Another thing is that, uh, Eileen, do you still remember the the perennial definition of knowledge? What is knowledge in that has been even mentioned by Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle? That is still relevant, I think, up to the now, even though uh, experiencing some criticism.
So knowledge by definition is a justified through belief.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I mean, you mentioned about that really well. So, uh, we know that we studied what epistemology, that there are many modes of knowing. What do you think is the problem with this? Suppose that we accept that using ChatGPT or AI to find information, and we can kind of casually say that that information becomes knowledge, not just information. What do you think about this kind of knowledge, or this knowledge obtained from this mode of knowing, in relation to the definition of knowledge as a justified true belief?
So in justified through belief, it says that it should be true, meaning it should actually be according to what actually the factual information. So as I have stated earlier, the information that we get from this ChatGPT can be inaccurate, and that
Yeah.
means that it is not true. And the other thing is that knowledge actually should be also valid, right? In a valid form. Uh, the reasoning process should be in orderly, and as what from what I've researched, there is a certain bias called regressive bias, and in regressive bias, this is like the process on which the system actually infers wrongly. So the cause and effect is not actually cause and effect, like that false cause or post hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy.
So it seems that as it generates, it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, as for what I've studied about this AI thing, it is that it's like a human being, but it's artificial human being. Like you're presented with information, and then you generate it in sort of like inductively or maybe deductively using the algorithm and all of the logical connections or relations, and then somehow, okay, so here comes up the final conclusion, or you can say conclusion or whatever, or like information. uh, can you relate this to what we have learned about uh, soundness or unsoundness of deductive reasoning?
So in a sound argument, it says that all of the premises and even the conclusion should be true, and the argument itself should be valid, right? So in this case, then the
Deductively valid, yeah?
deductively valid. And so in this case, actually the technology on which AI this ChatGPT is developed is using the large language model that is causal, and it is based on predictions and not like certainty. And so the predictions is based on like the data training. So it depends on how much data it is trained on. And so when the data is not sufficient, then the inference or the reasoning process is not can be not valid and not true as well.
So it could be inductively also problematic, yeah,
Yes.
the lack of information. And when the information comes, it is false, then that can result in, even though
False
the
conclusion.
chain, the logical chain is okay,
Yeah.
the structure is okay, the relations are okay, but there is like a
False premise.
false
Yeah.
premise, or there's materially problematic gitu, yeah. All right. And then another one is that, okay, what's your response according to, there's like one contemporary philosopher from Indonesia, from Sekolah Tinggi Filsafat dari Arkarya. His name is, I think you know, I mentioned about this to you a few months ago, Martin Suryajaya.
Yes.
That he is making a research about like that. Even nowadays, many artists have started to generate, to use AI. Like, for example, just combining the paintings of Van Gogh, for example, the paintings of Rembrandt, the paintings of, I don't know, Jackson Pollock, for example, and then just mix it all together, and then it can be presented like For example, like we are under a dome like that, and it's very beautiful. It's just based on AI. Or this is another maybe surprising to some people, maybe not so surprising to some other people, that even poetry, poems could be made by AI. Like you just put the inputs of the words that are used so much by, for example, T.S. Eliot, or by Gunawan Muhammad, for example, or siapa lagi, Khairil Anwar, for example, and then you mix that all together, and yeah, voila, there comes this, poem that is unique.
Yeah.
What is your response about this phenomenon? It has happened even now, and I think it will be happening still in the future, especially in the Western world. Yeah. What do you think? What is your response to this phenomenon?
So, from what I believe, art should be actually something that includes emotions. And actually, when like T.S. Eliot or like the original poets and artists draw or use make this poetry, they have a story of their own behind each. And with us, with this chatbot, only like putting it all together and match it in a way, it loses the essence of like the beauty of the background stories and experiences that this chatbot does not have.
I want to just, that's beautiful, because that's what I was wanting you to say earlier, and even to argue in your thesis, that the point of communication is meaning. And we can't communicate meaning without the heart. It's not going to be just the head, right? Yeah. That it has to be both the heart and the passions, right? And if you're going to touch the affections, that's something that is uniquely human, because it's how we bear God's image. Well done.
Okay, one short question. In relation to second reason or premise in your thesis argument or statement that says that it has been just used recently. What if some people object by saying that it's kind of a chronological snobbery argument. It's like just whatever is new, it should not be used whatsoever by any means like that. Right. What do you think if people try to oppose what you're proposing right now by bringing up that, oh, that's chronological snobbery, come on.
Okay. So from what I've researched, like when I first researched about this topic, I also get to think like other technologies in the past that we now use commonly, like for example, telephones, or that shifts to now smartphones and things like that. At first, people also doubt the ability of telephones and like radio waves. Like how can people here and there communicate with each other? And so, however, the point that I am trying to emphasize is that it still needs a lot of touch and like improvements. For example, the telephones itself, from first the ability for one wire to actually transport to another wire until a real telephone by Alexander Graham Bell was made. It needs like about 200 years of improvement. And so what I'm suggesting here is not that we should completely neglect this whole idea, but we should still we should still acknowledge the limitations that it could give and like use it for the correct purposes. As it develops, we also develop.
One last short question. The last one, and this is kind of the same question that I asked to Charlene also. So what virtue is it? Because rhetoric is the art of a good man speaking well, a virtuous man speaking well. What virtue is it, or what cardinal virtues, what transcendental, what universal do you think will happen if people here, the audience here, sort of obey or do what you want them to do, what you just persuaded them to do? You can mention more than one.
Okay, so according to me, the most virtue that is shown in this is temperance and wisdom, because temperance is the art of self-control. And so by us, following what I have advocated in this thesis, then people will have the self-control of using this for the correct purpose, and it will end up with them being wise in also using it. And like we also develop as AI develop, and not we become stagnant on only the AI develops, because it cannot.
Thank you, Aileen. So proud of you.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, very well done, Aileen. I have a couple of quick questions for you. So I noticed, of course, when you started this whole process, I think you were looking at AI in general, and then you got more specific into ChatGPT. But there are other AI tools out there. What are some of the other AI tools that maybe even other kids are using?
So some other AI is like Microsoft Copilot. This is like the AI, like ChatGPT, but it has the additional feature of having a footnote. A footnote is contains of website links that could actually say the reference of the answer. But then this footnote itself is still limited to only 3 website links, as well as other. Microsoft Copilot is actually only available, or it could only be useful for like Microsoft users, and most of us still use like Google. And so I think that why I brought up ChatGPT 3.5 is first because it is the most widely used chatbot, as well as why I choose the 3.5 instead of the now 4.0 technology is because during my first initial research, this 4.0 is still very new, and so there's still limited data according.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so
Oh, go ahead.
these other tools, would you have the similar arguments about them, like the Microsoft Copilot, and even I know using Quillbot to rewrite is not exactly the same kind of thing, but would you have the similar kinds of arguments, or are those tools better, would you say?
I would say that Microsoft Copilot to some extent is better than ChatGPT 3.5, as I've already explained earlier about the footnotes, because it will also help the argument about credible citations. But then this Microsoft Copilot also is limited because it still has the language bias because it's only available to 8 languages. So yeah, it's still improving as well.
Okay, we're out of time, but I have one
Okay,
more
go ahead.
question.
You
Do you need to ask one?
Well, I just wanted to ask her a specific of how would you suggest we implement this, say at CBCS?
Wait, that's my question. That's my
Oh,
question.
sorry. You know what? It's because we have
My
the
question
same mind.
is-
It's because we're of
No,
one
this
heart, one
this
mind.
is my question. This is my question.
Sorry, it's Mr. Wade's question.
If you were me and you've got to implement an AI policy next year, which I desperately need to, and I think maybe I've showed you guys part of what I expect. What are the key components of that AI policy that you would use?
How we would use it wisely. How do we train students to do this well as a tool?
Okay. So for the AI policy itself, I think that it should actually start from like grammar school, even like introducing them, like adding to the curriculum introduction of AI, and even like for example in SOL they'll be trained to like how to engineer prompt correctly and wisely. Like adding them to the curriculum, and for like the high school students now who are already in this stage where they are already exposed to it and they can misuse it, I think that the most effective way now is still to like embrace them, and the policy should, as what you already have tried to do, is the transfer and usage. And so with us being exposed to how to use this properly, the decision is still finally to each student, right? Because but I would say to the students that the effect of this using this depending on it too much will only be felt later on in your life. And so we can only tell them, but we cannot force them.
Okay, very good. We are over time. Good job, Aileen. You did a great job. Okay, excellent. So